Thanks.
Good evening and welcome to the June 3rd, 2021 Parks and Recreation Commission regular video meeting. I'm Rory Westberg, Parks and Recreation Commission Chair. In accordance with Proclamation 20-28.10 and the Governor's extended Safe Start order, tonight's Park and Recreation Commission meeting is using video conferencing technology provided by Zoom. The Zoom video of this meeting is being recorded and will be broadcast live via Zoom and will be uploaded to the city's YouTube channel later this evening. City staff Jesse Bond, Ryan Daly, Jason Kintner, Merrill Thomas-Schatt, Katie Ertzog, Councilmember Liaison Jake Jacobson, and consultants Emily Moon and Steve Dew are participating in tonight's meeting remotely. Other public audience members are listening to the meeting by telephone or via the internet. Welcome to all and thank you for joining us tonight. At this point, I'm going to depart slightly from the meeting plan and ask Ryan to say a few words about what the status of the commission vacancies is. So Ryan, would you just give us a quick update before we launch into our regular meeting?
Absolutely. Ryan Daly, Operation Transition Team Manager. As most of you or all of you know, we had two commissioners conclude their terms last month, leaving us with two vacancies as we moved into this meeting. The two commissioners, Commissioner Gualtieri and Commissioner Richter, both of them, first off, I just want to thank them for their service on this commission. From a staff perspective, absolute pleasures to work with, and provided a lot of great input toward the work that we've been doing. So I do want to thank them. We will be planning a more public recognition as we go into the summer, as well as a recognition of some of our other volunteers as well at an event. And yes, you heard me say the words event. We're planning that. It's exciting. We get to actually get in front of people, not virtually. So really looking forward to that. I think it's an excellent opportunity for us to recognize the work that those two commissioners really put forth in supporting the Parks and Recreation Department. So with that, I mentioned we had two vacancies. One of those vacancies was filled. Commissioner Markson she is on the meeting now, Sarah Markson, and she, if I can ask her to share a little bit about her background and also what drove your interest in joining the Parks and Recreation Commission? And I'm sorry, Commissioner Markson, if I put you right on the spot when you logged in, but what we can do is we can revisit that later in the meeting. I do know that the Commissioner Markson did mention she had a prior commitment tonight. She got about 4 hours notice for this meeting. So thanks again for jumping on. And Rory, I will pass it back to you.
Okay, Sarah Markson, if you can find the little button at the bottom of your screen to turn your video on, that would be great. And let's proceed with calling the roll. So commissioners, would you please turn on your microphones, and would city staff please call the roll?
Okay, thank you. Chair Westberg.
Here.
Vice Chair McCarthy.
Here.
Commissioner Cohen.
Here.
Commissioner Birkenwald.
Here.
Commissioner Struck.
Here.
Commissioner Markson, I can see that you're there and I saw your chat, so I'm gonna mark you down and I'll see what I can do on my end to help with the mute if it's on our end. So I'll check it out. Thank you.
Okay, commissioners, before we start the business of tonight's meeting, I'm going to suggest the usual rules to help the meeting run smoothly. If a commissioner has a question, please use the raise hand feature. I'll do my best to recognize each commissioner in the order in which their hands are raised. Everyone will be asked to limit him or herself to one question and to one clarifying question. if necessary, so that each commissioner has a chance to ask a question before a commissioner is given another chance. Additionally, prior to speaking, please state your name for those listening in on the meeting. Tonight's agenda will not include in-person public appearances in accordance with Proclamation 20-28.11 and the Governor's Extended Safe Start Order. I finally learned to say that, Safe Start Order. However, individuals wishing to speak live during the appearances portion of our meeting may do so by telephone or using the Zoom teleconferencing application, provided, however, they registered their desire to speak with the city staff by 4 p.m. today. City staff, are there any members of the public who wish to address the commission?
None tonight.
None tonight. Okay, in that case, we will begin addressing our agenda. And first, Commissioner McCarthy has a question. So Jody, go ahead.
Thank you, Rory. This is Jody McCarthy. I just wanted to suggest a change to our agenda. I would like to make a motion to change our agenda to make the election of officers the thing that we do at the end of the meeting. Just to save us, if we do it at the beginning, then it has to change to that person being the chair, and it just sounds like it would take a lot of time. So to streamline everything.
I'll
So,
second that motion, Don Cohen.
Okay, motion has been made and seconded by Commissioner Cohen. Meryl, will you please call the roll? So the commission will have an opportunity to vote on that motion.
Sure thing. Chair Westberg.
Aye.
Vice Chair McCarthy.
Aye.
Commissioner Cohen.
Aye.
Commissioner Birkenwald.
Aye.
Commissioner Struck.
Aye.
I see Sarah there again, but we have what we need for that
Let's
vote.
see. Can
Oh,
you
there
hear
you
me?
There you are,
Okay.
Sarah. Thanks.
Hi, yes, and I'm turning on my video now. Hold on. Sorry. Okay, but thank you. Aye.
Aye. Okay, I got your vote. Thank you. So we can move the agenda.
Okay, so the motion passes and the agenda is amended to move the election of officers to after our discussion of the pros plan and before the planning and meeting schedule update. Okay, the first item of business is to review and consider approving the minutes from May 6, 2021 meeting. Does anyone have any comments or concerns about the minutes? I actually had one. Let's see, Meryl, it seemed like there was a missing verb on the, let me see. On the second page, there's a sentence that says a discussion about the balance of resources that go toward more and less parks without a verb.
Okay.
So there needs to be something. And then this is more of a comment than a change I think we would need to make for these minutes, but the following sentence says, Kittner asked the group about their reaction to the conditions assessment, if it was what they expected or not, but we didn't capture any of the responses.
Okay.
It's as though we
Cool.
were,
We'll work with Ryan on going back and looking at those again if we want to have them in there. We have them in the video.
okay.
I'll amend that.
I just thought there should be something indicating there what the response was.
Mhm.
So with those changes, can I have a motion for approving minutes?
Council or Commissioner Westberg, if I could chime in briefly, Ryan Daly, Operations Transition Team Manager. if it would suit the commission, we could come back with those minutes after we've reviewed the previous meeting to input that information. I don't want to take a guess at it and confirm the minutes if they're not
Complete.
accurate to what the commission would like to reflect. So if the commission's comfortable with that, I could return in July with the minutes from that meeting and this meeting.
Does that work for me? Just thumbs up if that's okay. All right, great. Good solution. The next item of business is an update on the recreation reset planning for 2022. For that presentation, we welcome Transition Team Manager Ryan Daly and Consultant Emily Moon.
Thank you. Wow, I just keep clicking on and off here. I apologize if I'm giving you the Ryan strobe tonight, but I will pass it straight on to Emily for an update of where we are with the recreation reset plan and some of the work that we've been doing. It's been a pretty fast pace for our work team, so I will pass it on to her. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Ryan. Commissioner Markson, you have so many big topics, fun topics ahead of you, and we look forward to getting you caught up, in particular on the Rec Reset project. So please don't hold back on questions that you might have this evening. So I'm just going to give a quick recap along the lines of what was in your packet, and then we're going to have a brief discussion tonight about 2022 and what programs, services, other sort of input that you want to give toward the development of the program plan and the budget for 2022. So in April, we had a joint meeting with the City Council. And during that meeting, we provided an overview of the reset strategy. And the reset strategy had multiple parts, as you all are aware of, including cost recovery and resource allocation, and kind of a rollout plan for programs and services. And then subsequent to that joint meeting, the City Council took action to release a reserve allocation, a set aside that had been placed in the budget for recreation programs and services prior to the structure sort of being in place to actually be able to deliver those. So in April, we said we're ready to do something. We'd like to have those funds released. And we gave some examples in our phasing plan of what those programs and services might look like for 2021, given that even at that moment, it was pretty challenging to understand exactly what we may be able to provide, particularly in person in the facility, in the community center. So the City Council said yes to the allocation request, release those funds, and directed staff to come up with the services and programs that we felt that we could deliver through the remainder of this year. And so we returned to you a month later and we said, okay, this is what we think it needs to be, in part based on that phasing plan we had created with your help, and also based on the input that we received that evening on April 20th with the City Council. And so we have been busy over the last couple of months getting ready to roll out programs along these lines. Drop-in activities at the community center. We're going to largely focus on activities that can take place in the gymnasium, again, with reduced staff still in 2021. We want to, and still some pandemic related occupancy constraints still in place, maybe just for the remainder of this month, but we don't yet know. We wanted to make sure that we were keeping the impacted footprint of the community center manageable. So drop-in activities in the gymnasium, those will largely be fitness or sports related. Gym rentals, we have community groups, longtime user groups of the gymnasium that are ready to get back playing and exercising with each other. And so we are going to make that possibility available. The Arts Council has endorsed an immediate action plan for their programs and services for 2021. And so the allocation that City Council approved in April will go toward implementing that action plan. The biggest piece of that, I think, for community members may be that the recreation staff and the Arts Council will be working on a summer concert series, a reduced mostly music in the park, 2 to 3 concerts around the end of August, beginning of September is what's currently anticipated. We'll have more news on that shortly. And then the allocation was also put toward getting the facility ready. There's landscaping work that has been a bit neglected. And then there's other inside facility readiness that we needed to undertake. The reserve funds also are going to be put toward providing some outdoor recreation programs or activities in the fall. And we are using those funds to prepare for permitting and delivery of a few community-wide special events. Some of those will be city-sponsored, city-run. Others will be city partnership or private special events that are available to community-wide participation. We have some different parameters for the remainder of 2021 that guide which special events the city is going to be ready to assist. So that's the program and service portfolio for the rest of 2021. In order to carry that out, we are busy recruiting for some customer service staff that can help in the facility, and also going to be hiring a recreation coordinator who can take on some of those management and organization related duties to make all these programs go. So that's the plan for 2021. What did not happen in April was the City Council did not endorse the strategy. We wanted to give them an opportunity to hear it, to process it, to ask questions, and then we were going to return. The plan at that time was to return to them in June and ask them if they have any changes that they want to make or if they're ready to endorse. And that's what your packet said this evening. I want to clarify, though, that the June meeting agenda got to be pretty full, and the endorsement of the strategy has been moved to July 6th. So that is the next night that the City Council will talk about the reset. In addition to reviewing the strategy and hopefully taking action on the strategy at that time, they will be given a preview of the 2022 budget request. And that will also include describing the programs and services that we would recommend or propose to provide to the community in 2022. They won't act on that budget, we don't believe, at that point in time. And in fact, we will be giving them a very high level overview of that budget proposal. The city will combine all necessary budget amendments for 2022 in its normal biennial process that will occur later in the fall. We're anticipating in November. Package up anything that needs to be tweaked in year 2 of the biennial budget and act on that in November. That will also include our proposal. So tonight, part of what we're hoping for is to get a little input from you on your hopes for 2022 programs and services, and anything else that you would like to comment on. As staff has been working toward that, because we have to get ready quickly. These once a month meetings are great, except when we need to make progress, significant progress in between. And that's where we are this time as well. So we have been working on a penciled based proposal. And we have been looking back toward your phasing plan to make sure that we are responsive to the input that you provided then. And therefore, our back of the napkin proposal at this moment in time does include starting up some of the programs and services that you had said should be brought on first. And if you recall, we really were focusing on tier one, the foundational level, the backbone business operations level, those programs and services that serve community-wide interests and may also be required under law. And then we were also focused on getting the economic engine going. So that was our tier 5, where people are paying for programs and services, and those are less tax supported services. And then we had a sprinkling in between tier 2, 3, and 4. And so now, as we look toward 2022, we're bringing forward more of those tier 2, 3, and 4 programs, and a couple in tier 5 that were not previously offered in 2021. So that list in your packet includes the fitness center, opening that up. We think we will be staffed appropriately to be able to supervise the use of the fitness center, we hope, in 2022. Developing and offering programs for preschool age kids. Starting up some socially focused programs for seniors. Remember, we differentiated in our pyramid between socially focused programs and the sort of human service, basic needs, kinds of programs like day health programs. Those are at a later phase. And then we're going to be doing a whole lot more work on community partnerships and supporting community events and really growing community involvement in programs and services and helping to carry out those types of recreation and cultural services activities in the community that could benefit from some city support, but aren't necessarily organized, run by the city. That makes the community a very rich, high quality of life place to live. And then we're going to expand drop-in services to be more than just fitness and sports related. So we would hope that we would begin to have drop-in activities that include things like billiards or maybe some type of card game, for example. There are a lot of different types of activities that don't require quite the same level of physical participation. And we're hoping to bring those back in 2022 or to explore some new possibilities. And I want to be careful. I just said bring back, but you know, rule number 1 for this team has been to be really focused on doing things that make sense. And so we will be evaluating which programs and services seem like a good fit for the community, have that level of community support and participation, are meeting demand, make good use of the facility, et cetera. And then lastly, we would hope to develop and start to offer some therapeutic or adaptive recreation programs. And commissioners will recall that the city has a reciprocity program with Bellevue. And so Mercer Island residents can take classes or participate in activities along those lines, therapeutic rec in Bellevue for the same price as Bellevue residents. But there's some desire on island to explore what might we be able to provide in-house and make more convenient to our residents. So that's one of the areas we will be looking at. So that's our initial thoughts on 2022. Before I ask for your thoughts on 2022, I'm going to take a step back because I skipped over a couple of things. I want to celebrate the fact that in 2021, our summer camp is getting started, and we have over 880 participants in those programs lined up to start here in a couple of weeks. Phenomenal. Yes, round of applause is deserved. And commissioners will recall that that's a new model. We decided that there was a way for us to successfully offer those programs and services this year even though we don't have the contingent of staff that we've had in the past. And so we have enlisted some trusted partners and vendors, and they are going to be the providers of the program under our umbrella and with our facilities. And so I think that we've been really pleased with the response from the community on that. And we hope to get good feedback after programs. And then I'm also happy to cheer on the fact that the building will be open to some public use, therefore, through summer camp. And then in July, mid-July, we're expecting on July 12th to be able to open the facility to those drop-in activities and gym rentals. So June when summer camp starts, July when drop-in and rentals begin, that will be the first moment that the general public has had access to that building since March of 2020. So it's great, great news. Another reminder is the facility won't be open for people to simply come in and hang out. It will be open to participants in those scheduled programs. So if you're there to participate in drop-in, or if you're there picking up a child at summer camp, or if you're there because your volleyball group has rented the gymnasium, that's great. But the day when we can open the facility to general public just to come in and enjoy is a day in the future when we get staffed up a little bit better to be able to provide the level of safety that we need to in the building.
Emily, if I
Okay.
could interject real quick.
Absolutely.
I haven't highlighted this in a while, but since we were talking about facility use and whatnot through the summer, one of the things I did want to mention to the commission is that the thrift shop will continue its donation processing in the Mercer room throughout the summer as we work to get them to a more permanent situation. So that's going to allow them to continue processing. Since we're not in a position right now to be renting it out, we're going to continue to make use of that facility, that specific room. So I just wanted to highlight that for the commission.
Thanks, Ren. All right. I also want to mention before we start talking about 2022 services and programs, the timing again on budget. So we would expect to give a high level overview in July to the City Council. We would expect them to take action on the 2022 budget in November. And then the funds would be available to us beginning in January, that fiscal year. So what that means is we probably aren't going to be in a position to deliver those programs and services I just named until second quarter of 2022. Even if we get an inkling in November that the budget is going through, we could post some of those positions, say in December. We'd be bringing on those people maybe in January, be ready to roll in, say, February. So I want to make sure that we have the correct assumptions and expectations about when we'd be able to deliver services. So quarter two, I'd hope earlier, and we'll see what the City Council has to say about that. If there's anything they want to take action on in 2021 to help us get started a little bit earlier, we certainly would welcome that. And so at this point, I'll turn it over to Chair Westberg, and happy to answer any questions or just to take your input on 2022.
I'm not seeing any raised hands, but I'll kick off with a comment, and then maybe other commissioners will chime in. A couple of things. One is that we talked about the work on policy related matters that was necessary to be able to move into 2022. And I know that's referred to in the report that you sent out to the commission, but somewhat vaguely. We may be coming to you and asking your involvement in this. And in particular, the council seemed very interested. They got really deeply in the weeds on differential pricing and some of those other issues. So it would help the commission, I think, to have a clearer and better idea of when the team expects our involvement on those policy issues, and specifically which policy matters you're going to come to us to discuss and review. And now we got a bunch of hands, so
Thank you.
that was sort of my main comment.
Sure, and Chair Westberg, if I might, I'll address that. I'm glad you brought it up. So that is still in the work plan. We need to make that progress on the policies that we had in that very, very long list that was attached to the reset strategy. I am still anticipating that in July, we will be bringing forth a policy for you to react to, or the bones of that policy for you to react to. And then we would subsequently go and stitch it up into something that looks a little more polished. And I'm anticipating that the first thing that we'll talk about is differential pricing. And by that, I mean, how do we categorize users, participants, the level of benefit or sponsorship that they get, the level of service that they get from the city. We're talking about running the gamut on these programs and services. So it's from how do we treat participants that take part in a class, say at the community center, all the way to how do we treat applicants for a special event permit. And so we want to do some categorizing of groups and really think through the pricing structure, how different groups are assessed those fees, and look at the way that it's been done in the past in Mercer Island and contemplate whether or not that's working for us or whether we want to make some changes. So that's the policy that I would expect to, or at least the framework of that policy to bring forward in July. The other thing that I heard from the meeting in April is not only a keen interest on the part of the city council and in that policy in particular, but a desire to have the Parks and Recreation Commission really play the active role in vetting those policies, developing it. And I will be frank with you, there's a little ambiguity as to whether or not they want to take action on those types of policies or pieces of the policies. And so that's a piece that we still have to work out. And I think that's why you saw the maybe less specific language in your packet. But July, I'm anticipating discussions on differential pricing. And then because you'll probably take the month of August off, maybe in September coming back and bringing another policy to you. Also along the lines of differential pricing, we'll probably talk with you about our parameters for how we're thinking about allocating space in the building. Space in the building is equal to access in some regards. And so that's a really important thing for us to be thoughtful about.
Well, yeah, we do have some time if we're looking at, second quarter of 2022, but
Yes.
Some of those are going to be thorny discussions, I think,
Yes.
and particularly depending how they're rolled out to the public. So,
Right.
Commissioner Struck.
Yes, thank you, Peter Struck. First, congratulations on the summer programming. It'll be interesting to see how that works out, but I think that it's just another example. There's a lot of demand for Park and Rec services. My suggestion is over the past month or so since we last met, clearly the economy and everything's been opening up and people are out more and more. And the one question I get more often than not is, well, when is this going to open up? When is this activity going to be available, et cetera, et cetera? And I don't really have a good answer for them in terms of saying, well, just go to the, Park and Rec's website and it'll be there kind of thing. So my suggestion would be, is if on the Park and Rec's website, there could be just kind of a simple table, I guess, where you could say, these kind of activities, and, here is the, well, how would I, possible opening, recommended opening and so forth. Clearly, as you mentioned, let's say billiards Q2, 2022 or something like that. subject to, budget approval and things like that. So there's a lot of unknowns, but I think the more transparency we can give the community and help, set expectations as to when they should expect these things, I think we will do a service to the community. Thank you.
Great, great. If I might, Chair, I'll just share that excellent point, and we are in progress with getting some more content on the city's website and out through various communication channels about this summer and the remainder of 2021. It'll be difficult to speak with confidence about what's coming in 2022 until we have an approved budget. But it will be our goal to also try to explain as much as we can, and some choices that City Council will be making as we get into July action and November action. And then certainly after November, we should be in a spot where we can say what 2022 looks like.
Commissioner Cohen.
Thank you, Don Cohen. I think, Emily, you said earlier that on July 6th at the council meeting, you now would be providing sort of a high level look at the budget request that would make its way for a couple of months. Maybe this is in the materials and I just don't remember it. Is the commission going to be engaged before the council does? Because we have our next meeting, 5 days before that, and July 4th occurs in the middle of that. So there ain't going to be much time if that's anticipated.
Yes, you're correct. And because of that schedule, and because City Council has, as part of their duties and responsibilities, the responsibility for the budget, the commission actually does not. We will be going directly to the City Council in July, but we want to make sure that we have your input and that we're incorporating that. And that's why we've been having these conversations for months, and why we're here tonight to have this conversation. We would also anticipate that as soon as that packet is ready for City Council toward the end of this month, that you receive copies of it. And we will be available, ready to answer any of your questions in advance of that City Council meeting. Also, because it's high level, we're anticipating having a similar meeting, albeit with a few more details, some numbers attached, with City Council on July 6th. And then we have an opportunity to take their input, your input as well, after July 6th, and make some tweaks to the budget and incorporate those into the ultimate proposal that goes forward for their action in November.
Can I ask a follow-up, Chair?
Of course.
I guess maybe this is impossible to do, but it's going to go to the council with numbers that this group hasn't seen, other than a day or two before the meeting over that weekend. And in a more perfect world, I assume you would want the commission to see the numbers and to express support or whatever it is before you took them, even though there's not an approval that's going to be made at the council meeting on July 6th. But if it can't be done, it can't be done for all the reasons that you've indicated. But it's a little bit disappointing because so much is riding on budget approval, and the first time real numbers are going to be floated to the council, this group, the commission, will not have had the opportunity to discuss them and weigh in on them.
It's true. I understand your desire. I would just say it's not part of the city advisory board's role, whether that's the Park and Rec Commission or another, to really engage at that level on budget development. Usually we bring things that then have impact on budget development, like what types of programs and services are you hoping to see? What kind of parks, capital projects are you wishing to undertake, that sort of thing. And those have budgetary effects. The numbers themselves are usually developed with staff and consultants and with city council. And then city council has ultimate purse responsibility.
After other people speak, I would like to comment on that response, Rory.
I see no other hands up, so go ahead.
Oh, well, no offense, but that's not the way we've done it before. You had numbers on some of the stuff on the interim funding, and that was part of the recommendation that was sent to the council. So I understand who has the authority to approve the budget. I understand it's not this commission or any other commission, but I also believe that if it were possible, it would be a useful tool to have this commission aware of that and be able to provide whatever input, if any, it had on it, even though it wasn't the decision maker on it. So I understand the problem, but I wasn't convinced by all of your response.
Commissioner McCarthy.
Thank you, Commissioner McCarthy here. Emily, you said that you were, once you had the information available, that you were going to send it out to us as soon as you had it. So we will have it. It seems like we'll have it well in advance of our next meeting on July 1st, correct? So we will be able to, at that meeting, we will be more than ready to make comments for it. Is there a way that we can provide questions beforehand and get those answered before our meeting so that that information can be included or shared with the council somehow before they go to their meeting on July 6th? Thank you.
Great question. And I think, not having the calendar right in front of me, I believe that a couple of things would be possible. First, I think that it will be possible to get the packet into your hand, the city council's July 6th packet into your hands at the same moment that they receive it. It's just protocol that council be the primary recipient on that. And so as soon as they get it, we'll get it to you. And I think the timing is such that you're right. We'd have an opportunity, if we'd like, to go through that on July 1st, talk about it. What is challenging about that timing is we can't go back in time and then incorporate that into the proposal or into the packet for city council. Having said that, though, that moment on July 6th is, again, just an input opportunity. It's the overview, it's the first step. And so we'd be happy to put a discussion item on your agenda to answer any questions that you might have, seek your input again at that time.
And a follow-up. So, or just a follow-up comment, really. So we could possibly encourage the city council to watch our meeting on July 1st to get our feedback, or like to see what we're talking about in this meeting, so that they have that when they go to their meeting on July 6th.
Sure.
Commissioner Struck.
Yes, Peter Struck, thank you. I just want to say that I support wholeheartedly Don, Commissioner Cohen's comments regarding, the budget and the timing and so forth. And I think we should probably clarify with the city council that if they don't want our opinions on the budget, that's fine. But I think they should make that very clear, because my sense is that from all the feedback I've gotten from city council members, is they do value the commission's input. So let's be real clear on where they're at. Thank you. Commissioner
Cohen, do you have a follow-up?
Don Cohen, I agree with Peter's comment. And if at some point anybody wants to take the commission's viewpoint on what happens to task, and they say, well, how come this budget for X number of dollars was approved? I don't want to just sort of say, sorry, and I'm also interested whether Jody's idea really works, because the typical time for the council to get its agenda packet for a June 6th meeting is going to be what, Ryan, is going to be the Thursday, maybe, or Friday before. So it isn't going to work the way that Commissioner McCarthy hopes that and we would all hope. So I don't think it can possibly work that way.
Chair Westbrook, and Ryan Daly, Operations Transition Team Manager. Commissioner Cohen, you're spot on with that. I was staring at my calendar, trying to remember how many times we've hit that deadline of a week before, and it doesn't happen for city council. And a prime example is these budgetary numbers are difficult to pin down, and when you're doing that across an entire city, that is a bit of a challenge. So I don't want to promise that you would get that packet on Thursday and have time to review it ahead of your July 6th meeting. I don't know that that's a realistic expectation. We will strive for it as staff, but traditionally, as Emily mentioned, the city council is the ultimate recipient of that, and we would copy the commission on it. So that document would need to be ready for them, and I just can't with 100% certainty commit to that being prepared for our July 1st meeting. But I do take your points on the budget and the what I'm sensing as a responsibility from the commission, or a sense of responsibility from the commission for those numbers, and that is absolutely noted.
This is Commissioner Westberg following up on all this discussion. Just to clarify, the numbers that are going to, excuse me, that are going to council in July are part of the sort of broad programmatic overview. They're not, while it's a budget, it's not necessarily the final set of numbers that council will look at and approve in the fall when they're adjusting the budget for the second year of the biennial. So we would, as a commission, potentially have the opportunity to look at participating in the revision of those numbers based on council response to the overall plan in July, following the July meeting. Is that not correct, Emily?
That is correct. And the primary purpose of the meeting in July with City Council is to lay out a proposal for programs and services, which then drives the budget development. And yet we know anytime you say we'd like to do X, they're gonna ask how much does that cost and what kind of staffing do you need for that. So one gets the other, and so we will be bringing a high level overview of the budget as it relates to our proposal for programs and services, and that's why we're starting tonight with a discussion with all of you about the portfolio of programs and services.
Commissioner Cohen.
Don Cohen. Let me make my point just a little finer. And I don't personally care if I see the agenda packet. I'd like to understand a little bit more on July 1st, the high-level version of the high-level version, just to get an idea. These are the kinds of things we think that we're aiming, and we're finalizing this packet for the council. They're the ones who are doing it, but here's what we're thinking. This could change in the next 48 hours, but here are the programs, and here is a ballpark figure that we're thinking of at this point. That's what I'm looking for in the real world of timing and level of detail and responsibility, and the opportunity later on to see actual numbers that they're considering.
Sure, we can do that.
Any other questions or comments on this? Okay. Seeing none. I guess, do you have any final comments, Ryan or Emily?
I'm just going to poke and prod one more time. We had a lot of conversation about who gets to review the budget and when, but not a lot of conversation about programs and services. So we gave you an idea of where we're headed, and I'd love some feedback on that so that I can bring that forward to the City Council on July 6th. July 1st.
Well, what's it going to cost?
Emma, you're muted.
Oh, thank you. Sorry. July 6th, City Council meeting. I misspoke. And we're still working on those numbers, Chair.
No, well, it's this is Commissioner Westberg. It's a little difficult to give you specific feedback on the categories that you provided in that those I'm pulling them up. Sorry, those categories represent broad areas of programming. What would be helpful to know is see a list of how those are fleshed out a little more specifically. What does that mean in terms of programs? Because to go back to Commissioner Struck's comment earlier, I mean, people, once that facility's open, people are going to want to know why can't I do it? You know, why can't I have the program or have access to the program that I had before? I don't think a lot of people on Mercer Island realize that one of the effects of COVID was to wipe out the entire recreation division in the city. And so we're rebuilding that from scratch. So, and also to know what your assumptions are regarding the revenue side. How much is what you're going to be able to offer being driven by the money you're able to generate through rentals and other revenue sources, and how do those all those pieces fit together? So, you know, broadly speaking, what you presented looks reasonable to me, but there's a lot of the detail missing.
Sure, I appreciate those comments. Thank you. One quick note on program development. You may recall that our hope was to spend more time on the program development in phase 1 through 2021. That didn't end up being where we were putting energy. And so we're a little behind on being able to say, when we say we're going to offer preschool age programs, we're talking about the category on the pyramid, right? The beneficiary group. But I can't tell you we're going to run preschool program X versus preschool program Y yet, because we haven't gone through the work of really evaluating which programs are most successful and we want to offer again, what instructors or vendors might be available to make that happen. We're just not there yet. And I don't anticipate being there, quite frankly, until the end of 2021. And in that case, only for the first quarter of 2022, where we're going to have to make some decisions about which programs and services to offer in that first quarter before we even have some of the staff that ultimately will be responsible for program development and program evaluation and program delivery. So that's part of our challenge right now.
Commissioner Struck.
Yes, thank you, Peter Stark. Yeah, so regarding the 2022 list of programs, fitness center, preschool age programming, et cetera, my comment is it's difficult for me to say. I'll say that they look fine, but you know, the question is what is my choice? So if you had said, well, the choice is we could do preschool age programming, however you define that, as you just described, versus elementary school programming, you know, make a choice, then I could probably give you some more specific feedback. But just these look fine, but again, I don't know what I'm leaving out, and so that's what I would need to really provide more feedback. But thank you.
Commissioner McCarthy.
Thank you. This is Jody McCarthy. I just wanted to say that I think that the areas that you're focusing on are areas that are not otherwise potentially addressed in the community. So I think that you know, focusing on the preschoolers and the seniors especially, and giving them opportunities at the community center seems to me like a logical place to be focusing our energies for programming, especially during the day, during the week for the rec center. Thank you.
And Commissioner Cohen.
Don Cohen, following up on something that Rory said. Here's the question somebody will ask. When can I play pickleball inside at the community center under this? Because somebody's got to be able to answer that at some point, right? And I don't remember if there's not a specific date, I don't think, in the materials, and maybe it can't be determined, but
Ryan can.
Huh? Pardon?
Ryan can.
Commissioner Cohen, this is Ryan Daly, Operations Transition Team Manager. You're asking the question that I've been asked 3 times just today. And I can give you that answer, and that falls within drop-in programs that will begin starting mid-July. So we're still fine-tuning what day, what time, all of that stuff. But that would be an example, and that's one of our gym drop-in programs. So it fits within sort of that bubble, so to speak, that we'd be operating in there. If you were to ask me when can I play billiards or ping pong or something like that, that was something that took place in more of the common spaces, that would be, put off more than likely until 2022 when we expand the operation of the facility. And I will just add to your earlier points about communicating that to the public, updating the website, and those elements. Those are key items that need to be addressed here in the very near future to get that messaging out so that those questions are answered. And I think I've had that conversation with a couple of you as recently as like 2 hours ago. So appreciate it, and we're going to continue to strive toward that expanded communication.
Don, did you have a follow-up?
No, I didn't. Thank you.
Okay, I'm not sure whether that gave you what you were looking for, Emily, but it was some more targeted guidance or opinions related to the overall structure for 2022. So
Grateful to have it. Thank you.
okay. All right. So before we launch into the third item of business, which is the pros plan, why don't we take about an 8-minute break and come back here at 6:35. So please turn off your video during that period, and we will reconvene at 6:35.
Rory, your mic is still on, just so you know.
Okay, by my watch at 6:45, so we will resume with the third item of business, which is the pros plan capital project prioritization tool, and this comments on a draft second community survey. And we welcome City Manager Jesse Bond and Consultant Steve Dew for this discussion.
Well, thank you very much and good evening, everyone. Again, my name is Jessie Bond and I'm your city manager. Jason Kittner and I are tardy tonight. We had another meeting, orientation with all of our city council candidates. Commissioner Markson, welcome and nice to meet you virtually. You might be wondering why I'm here. I'm pinch hitting, helping with the pros plan development, given all the other priorities the Parks and Rec Commission and Public Works staff are handling right now. So with that, Steve, I'm going to kick it over to you to talk about prioritization, and then we'll move on to the survey discussion.
Okay, thank you, Jesse. Good evening, everyone. Again, my name is Steve Dew, Conservation Techniques, and our firm's helping develop the updated pros plan for Mercer Island. It's good to be back with the commission and continue the discussion that we, in a sense, started last month when we reviewed conditions and the conditions assessment of existing facilities. So for today, as you see in your packet, there's two specific next steps in the discussion on the pros plan. The first of which is looking at ways to prioritize projects that get listed in the plan. So I will put up on the screen here in a moment the memo or parts of the memo that are in your packet tonight, but I want to walk you through some initial comments before diving a little deeper into the content of that memo. So to start, the pros plan will have a list of specific projects, capital projects, physical projects that will help improve or enhance the city's services for parks and open spaces and enable the provision of recreation opportunities that the community is interested in. So the project list itself is a core feature of the pros plan because it then identifies what the city intends to do over the next 6 to 10 years, maybe longer. And then it becomes the springboard for conversations with city council about which projects are priorities and why, and how budgets get formed. So the pros plan is not a budget document, and the capital facilities plan is not a budget document, but it informs those budget discussions. So if you think about all of the wants and needs and interests that we've heard about from the community during the course of this project that's been going for over 1.5 years now, I'm sure you can come up with a very long list. So the idea of crafting a list of projects is really the easy part. The next easy part, or I should say a less easy part, is putting dollar figures to those specific projects. Like we heard in the previous conversation about recreation programs, what's it going to cost is going to be a key question. So the capital facilities plan project list will have projects noted with some descriptions, and will have dollar values associated based on what we would anticipate those projects costing. The harder thing to do is to actually rank and prioritize those projects in some rational fashion that is defensible, is clearly and easily understood, and can be relatable to the public who reads this and to the policymakers of city council who look at this and say, I understand why you came to this conclusion about why this project is a potentially more important or higher priority project than the other project. So tonight, I want to introduce the notion of capital plan project prioritization. That's a lot of words to stick in there, but basically it's a method to identify the types of values and relative importance of those values as a way to rank and prioritize projects. So I'm going to transition to my screen here for a moment, if you'll bear with me. And if I can confirm that you can see that with a head nod. Yes, okay. So the notion of prioritizing projects can be at a fairly high level of, is this project essential? Meaning, is it an urgent or high priority issue? Does it address emergency issues, remedy a safety issue? Or is it just desirable and acceptable and just something that is a nicety, but not necessarily a core functional priority? That's kind of a framework to think about how to consider project prioritization. But as we also put in the memo, there are different ways to think about what kinds of projects should have maybe more weight than others. So things that address existing safety concerns, whether it's a playground or play structure, I should say, that is old or failing or has rusty parts, that should be replaced probably sooner than a new park gets built with a new piece of play equipment. So comparing projects based on certain qualities or conditions will help inform how these projects get prioritized. Separately, this listing of concepts can also be put into the PROS plan in the form of goals and policy language to help implement and essentially codify or indoctrinate the reasons why projects are elevated or lowered in priority over time. So again, the PROS plan then becomes the frame for which future decisions are made and future projects are judged. And I will then just go to the actual table here. Hopefully you can see that okay. So what we did in the memo, and hopefully you had a chance to take a quick review of it, is we worked internally with staff to craft an initial listing of possible criteria that we can apply to each and every project that would get put on the capital project list. And with those criteria, we're not only defining what the criteria are, but we're identifying a rating scale. So how are we judging each project criteria or each criteria? And then what might we weight those criteria to essentially amplify the relative strength of that criteria compared to others. So the end goal is to create basically a matrix weighting where we have a list of projects, we have a set of criteria that are then rated and weighted to then get to a method to calculate which sorts of projects rank highest and which are lower on the list. Things that are low on the list don't mean they drop off the list forever, but they may be projects that you can find partners for or other means to implement them rather than potentially tapping into precious and sometimes unavailable capital dollars. So again, the capital project list is a way to help inform future budgeting and decision making. So the criteria that we've come up with, as you can see on the screen, are numerous. There's 7 there. We wanted to try to identify not only a range of criteria to capture the different styles of improvements or opportunities to enhance the system, but we also are trying to balance whether this is too much or too few. So one question for the commission after we get through this is a question about, are these the right criteria, first off? Secondly, Are there too many or not enough? Is there something different you would add or another criteria you would consider? And then separately, whether the weighting scale is appropriate, right, or what have you. So I'll walk through these criteria really quickly. And then, yeah.
Can I just interrupt? I just want to make sure to emphasize, this is a draft document. So the goal for tonight is to get, feedback from the Parks Commission so that we can refine this tool and bring it back to you and then actually use it against our project list to start developing that capital facilities plan. So we're looking for your feedback tonight on what you like, what you don't like, and the changes you'd like to see. So Steve will run through the 7 real quick. This that we proposed maybe or may not be the right combination.
Thank you. Yeah, so one criteria is with regard to safety and security, projects that address safety and security needs, public park space that's accessible to all, things that have high risk would be rated with a higher rating. And you can see there's a rating scale of 0, 1, and 2. Most of these are 0, 1, and 2, except for a couple that are just 0s and 2s. They're binaries. It's kind of a yes, no. And then in the definitions, it explains what 0, 1, and 2 represent. So for the issue of safety and security, a project that once implemented doesn't address a risk or is a low risk or safety issue gets a rating of 0. Something that's addressing a high risk gets a 2. And you can see how that might work. Safety and security from our internal draft approach is one that we think is a high level priority as a criteria. So we put a weighting factor of it of 6. And that means that any project can have a score for the criteria of safety and security only as either a 0, a 6, or a 12. And these numbers will get added up, and I'll show that in a moment. Let me work through the rest of the criteria. Another criteria is about operating budget impact, whether the proposed project impacts the operating budget. If it is an increase to the budget, it gets a weighting of or rank of 0. And if it decreases, it gets a rating of 2. So that's the one that's kind of inverse than how you would normally think about some of these. But just to be consistent with how the numbers get rolled up and calculated, that's the way we've approached this. Another is geographic distribution. This one's binary. So basically we look at the island and say, if the project is north of 40th Street, then it gets a 0. If it's south of, it gets a score of 2, with the notion that the majority of the larger developed parks, Aubrey Davis, Luther Burbank, they're on the north side of the island. So it helps address a bit of equity in the system. So projects that are south of 40th come across as slightly stronger, again, just for that one criterion. Expanding opportunities is kind of a catch-all for projects or improvements that add amenities, that improve ADA access and usage, improve equity. And again, you can see it's a 0, 1, and 2. Extending useful life is another criteria where projects that get implemented are prolonging the life of the capital investment. Again, you can see the rating definitions on that. Another criteria is unique recreation feature. So for this one, we wanted to acknowledge that certain parks and certain park amenities are unique to the system and have special character that goes with that, such as docks and piers, all-weather turf, a splash pad if you had one. Those sorts of either high cost or high value or specialized amenities would be rated accordingly. And then last is acknowledging high use or high intensity sites as projects get put in that support those sites that are heavily used to either accommodate more usage or spread usage across the site or provide benefit for users of those highly intensive sites, that would get a positive rating. So those are the criteria, and I'm sure there's questions, but let me just show you how that criteria gets applied. So as Jesse noted, we will want to apply some or all of these criteria in some fashion based on your direction to what will be a initial project list for the pros plan. What you have on screen is a snapshot of some known existing capital plan projects, specifically for Aubrey Davis, where we took those criteria, we worked with staff to identify how those criteria would be rated against each of the score options. And then at the far right, you can see in the color-coded bars how that sum gets aggregated for each project. So the high score with this system as it currently is 34. So the higher the score, the higher the priority. And I just wanted to offer this as a way to demonstrate how projects could be prioritized through this weighted matrix model. And with that, I'll take a pause and see if Jesse, if you want to add anything else, or if I should stop screen sharing for questions.
Well, let's, I think it's a good time now to talk about the draft criteria and take feedback. I just want to disclose Parks and Rec Commission that sample project weighting that Steve just showed. I actually did that exercise and in full disclosure, did not consult the park planners or the park maintenance staff. In the interest of time, but once you've helped us identify the criteria, we will go back to that list with our entire professional staff team and do the scoring in a very comprehensive, thorough way. So that was just an illustration.
So with that, I'll turn it back to the chair to see if there's questions or comments about the criteria. Again, are they the right criteria, too many criteria, too confusing? Is something missing?
Okay, Commissioner Cohen.
Thank you, Don Cohen. No offense, but it didn't jump out at me as easy to understand when I looked at it before some of this explanation. So if that's one of the goals, as Steve said, maybe some of the information, like for example, is the scale of the weighting factor 1 to 6? I assume it is that right?
The weighting factor is 1 to 6, yes.
Okay. And this is sort of like when you're in litigation and you want to settle a case that has multiple issues, at least the way some of us have done this over the years. You say, I've got a 20% chance of prevailing on issue number 1, a 30% chance on issue number 2, and a 40% chance of issue number 3, and so forth and everything. The problem, and I don't have an alternative, the problem is very small changes have significant potential impacts on the maximum score and therefore on your next page. And I've always kind of felt that it was an artificial way to give comfort to decision makers that didn't necessarily translate into the real world. But it may be that the city manager's comment about what the next steps are of actually going through this and seeing if it comports with the staff's view of reality and everything helps flesh that out. But that was my reaction, only because I've gone through similar kinds of things in totally different contexts and never been comfortable that I was achieving a really meaningful result, other than I had something on paper that you could sort of look at the numbers and track.
Commissioner Cohen, if I could just offer some color commentary. I think we can certainly build out the explanations here a little bit more. How this shows up in the pros plan as a final document is still to be determined. This is a, a working product, if you will, for the Parks and Rec Commission. And, I will tell you, and Steve originally developed a list that had like 3 or 4 criteria on it, and it's my fault it expanded. We went back through our notes and we looked at, the information we've gathered over time. Some cities really, just use one criteria. It's the safety criteria and say, is this a safety risk? If yes, it gets prioritized. Everything else is, public process, Parks and Rec Commission decides, or the council decides. So really we can turn the knob either direction here. And we want the tool to be useful. It's a scoring tool. It doesn't mean that it's, forever etched in stone that those projects go first. So I don't know if that gets you thinking about ideas, how to simplify this. I think Steve and I are both feeling that we have too many criteria. We'd like to simplify it a bit.
This is Don Cohen, just with one follow-up. The number of the criteria didn't strike me negatively. It was the weighting factor and what that, how that's derived and the effect that it has on the numbers. And that even if it's not our intent or not the city's intent to be governed purely by the number factors that you wind up with at the end, somewhere or another, that document, that information is going to be out there and it's going to take on at least a partial life of its own.
Yeah.
Commissioner Struck.
Yes, thank you, Peter Struck. I talked with Ryan a little bit earlier today about this, and because I have several comments, I think I'm going to put a lot of them in writing since this is very preliminary, but just a few thoughts. The last one, high use intensity, where the rating definition is does not support a high use site or does support a high use site. That somewhat implies that you're going to have a list of what is a high use site, right? So, which I'm assuming is like a Luther Burbank or a Aubrey Davis and so forth. So what does that mean though? Well, that means that in the ranking, that if you're Luther Burbank, you're already automatically going to get 2 points essentially for this one. If say you have a pickleball court, if it's at Luther Burbank, it gets 2 more points than if it's going to be at Rotary Park, as an example. A couple other things, looking at expanding opportunities and extending useful life. I think, the definition says for extending useful life, it says either replacing existing amenities or adding new, you're going to get a benefit. Well, if you got a new project, you're already getting that benefit in expanding opportunities. So you're kind of double counting and again, incentivizing new over existing. I don't think that's what we want. So there's kind of an internal inconsistency there in my mind. In terms of criteria that are missing, I was looking for environmental impact. So for example, if you have a project that says, we're going to pave over half of Mercerdale Park, I'm not sure that flies. I don't know where that would come in here, if it would be something that would be outside of this ranking type of thing. But I think, or if you had another project that was going to, take down several, mature trees, where does that come in? Things like that. So I think that needs to be addressed either within this or saying, well, that'd be something outside. And I think that in terms of the operating budget impact on the rating definitions, I would probably kind of just tweak those definitions a little bit and say, a zero would be, a material increase in operating budget, however you define material. Then no change, no material change in operating budget. So again, you're kind of doing a range, because if you just leave it at this, a $10,000 increase in operating budget versus 500,000, well, that's a big difference, but on this rating scale, it would be the same. So I think you need some gradation there if you're going to do that. And yeah, I have a few others, but I'll stop there. Thank you.
Commissioner Struck, may I just ask a follow-up? You started out with the high use intensity site criteria. Could you just share a little bit more? Do you like that criteria? Would you
Yeah,
recommend
I
not
look at
using
it.
it?
Yes, I look at it as level of service as opposed to kind of high use site. So it's kind of saying, whatever site you're at, does this project really, I think what you're trying to get is, does this really increase the intensity of usage within that space? And so to me, I wrote down kind of level of service as opposed to high use site, if that helps.
Thank you.
Commissioner McCarthy.
Thank you, Jody McCarthy. I'm going to Jesse's question about which ones do you think are the most, or do we need all of these? And when I look at them, the three to me that seem like the ones that they make the most sense about using criteria for them are, of course, the safety and security. Is this going to be safe for people to be in the parks with it? Extending the useful life, except for the add new amenities, because if we can take better care of what we already have, then that obviously makes more sense than having to completely reinvent the wheel. And then the extending opportunities projects, again, we will go back to our pickleball example. We have some underused tennis courts, and changing that over to something that's going to be used more by the community, especially something that can be used by a range of ages, seems like, that would be such a great opportunity to add value to our park system. I like Commissioner Struck's idea about an environmental component as well, to look at that, since that is something that is really important to people on Mercer Island. When I look at the unique recreation feature and the high use intensity site, to me, those things are almost could be combined in a lot of ways, because our unique features happen to be also usually the high intensity use sites here. That could sort of, in my mind, be added into one, or just take out the unique recreation feature. Thank you.
Commissioner Cohen.
No, sorry, I didn't have any more comments.
Okay. This is Commissioner Westberg. I had a couple of comments sort of along the lines of Commissioner McCarthy's. In looking at these criteria, I think that the high use intensity site I would reword, but I think it speaks to level of service. How much bang are you getting for your buck? How many park users are you affecting with your investment in improving facilities, and where, frankly, are parks being pounded into the dirt and need some extra TLC? So I would definitely give that a higher weight than it's been assigned in this table. I think, and to me, it may not be politically feasible, but I think geographic distribution is irrelevant in this case. If you consider the other key criteria, safety and security, expanding opportunities, extending useful life, looking at the impact on park users that a project will have, I think geographic distribution is irrelevant. And I say that as someone who lives south of 40th Street, so I didn't realize I was being disadvantaged. And then I think that unique recreation feature kind of gets folded into those other criteria. So I personally, I think you could do away with unique recreation feature, the geographic distribution, and operating budget. I would give a lower weight to, unless it could be redefined somewhere a little more precise, because as Peter pointed out, there could be a modest effect, or there could be a significant effect on the operating budget. It should be considered, but that's really the that's really the role of the council, I think.
That's great. Commissioner Westberg, may I ask a follow-up question?
Sure.
Excuse me, Chair Westberg. So we really wrestled with the geographic distribution criteria. And in some cities that are a little further along with, they have more advanced park planning tools. They've developed criteria where they set a goal, for example, of having a park within a half a mile walking distance from every home. I think Redmond, that's their geographic equity criteria. We're not in a position to get that fancy yet. It may be something that we set, you know, for the future that we really want to look at walkability, but we're just not there yet. So we were wrestling with this, and this was a very just simple, knowing that most of your major parks are loaded up on the north end. We just wanted to check signals with the commission. Is this important for you? It gives a boost to the south end projects. So I'd love to hear from the rest of the commission, and certainly Chair Westberg, if you have any follow-up thoughts on that. It's also a criteria that we think you could probably live without. We were on the fence, so.
Well, I'll just follow up to your question, and then I think Commissioner McCarthy or Commissioner Birkenwald has a question. I think it depends sort of on how you look at the overall split in terms of park. I mean, most of the major parks are on the north end, or there are major parks on the north end. Most of the recreational facilities and fields are on the south end. Most of the open space is on the south end. So you know, you can kind of go back and forth. And frankly, I don't think the island is so large that that makes a significant difference, in my opinion. That's strictly my opinion. Commissioner Birkenwald.
And I'd love to see, in council meetings, we do thumbs up, thumbs down. I do want to get kind of clear direction from the commission tonight on if something's out. I want to make sure I've got majority direction. So we don't have to do that now, Chair Westberg, but just before we conclude this topic.
Yeah, we'll have to wait till the screen is cleared.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Oh, no, I guess we could, well, yeah, we'll have to wait till the screen is cleared.
Would it be helpful if we stop sharing now, or is it useful to have this on the screen?
Maybe let's go through this next round of questions and then we'll see where we are.
That's great. Thank you.
Commissioner Birkenwald.
Okay, this is Commissioner Birkenwald. I just wanted to say that I like the idea of adding the environmental component. I think that's a really good idea. And then I'm not sure about the geographic distribution. I can see it both ways. Because Jesse, when you put it in context about having a park within walkability of every half mile, that is an appealing thing also. So, but I hadn't thought about that. So I think it could go either way. I also like the idea of keeping it simple. So I know you had said there might be too many initially, and so yeah, I don't know. I think keeping it as simple as possible is always good. That's all.
Thank you, Commissioner McCarthy.
Commissioner McCarthy, I think the geographic distribution doesn't need to be in there. As Rory pointed out, yes, there are some major parks on the north end, but we have Groveland and we have Clark Beach, and we have the huge sports facility between Lake Ridge and IMS that has a playground. And there's also all of the little street end parks, and we have Pioneer Park. So I'm going to say that a lot of the south end is within half a mile of a park, maybe not a particular, it might not have all of the facilities that they want, but they are definitely pretty close to within half a mile of a park. Even if, yeah, that's my 2 cents. Thanks.
Commissioner Struck.
Thank you, Peter Struck. So on a geographic distribution, I agree that it's probably not necessary. Although I think I like the diversification distribution thing, but I think as the chair and the vice chair has just said, I think it makes sense we could drop that. Also, I think that if the high use intensity site characteristic or criteria is tweaked a little bit to kind of level of service, I think that'll get a little bit at the geographic distribution in the sense that if you've got most of your high use parks to the north and you want to try to distribute that out a little bit more, that that element would help. Thank you.
Commissioner Cohen.
Don Cohen. I agree about adding something environmental. I agree that geographic distribution does not need to be included. On high use or intensity site, I'm hearkening back to the discussion from the last time that the city manager commented on, and I and others did too, that there are some places that aren't supposed to be as high intensity as other places. And I'm just not sure exactly how that criteria winds up being used on that. So if you, let's just take Pioneer, something to put something in Pioneer Park, if that's going to be a new project that's being considered, does that get a heavy weight or a low weight or what? And do you want it to? And sort of like Clark Beach last time, I think was our example, that somebody commented that it isn't very heavily utilized, and some people thought that was a good thing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I don't see any more hands, so we can probably drop, or are there additional comments from people about what Steve is showing us on the screen?
Mayor Westberg, can I make an extra comment?
Sure.
So I appreciate all the feedback on the set of criteria. And I guess the one thing I want to note with regard to the geographic distribution piece in particular is that this set of criteria is somewhat biased toward existing developed sites or existing sites. So hypothetically, if the city wanted to purchase additional property or a new site or expand Clark Beach or some other waterfront property on the south side, south of 40th, that new acquisition project would have a hard time competing against an existing facility project that improves safety or an existing facility that adds an amenity. So part of the thinking about having it in there, again, was about the equity and distribution, but also about acknowledging that maybe today's system isn't your final system, and that future improvements or acquisitions or long-term acquisitions over 10 or 20 years might reframe how amenities or facilities are provided on the island. So I just wanted to share that.
This is Commissioner Westberg. In response to that, Steve, I would say simply that given the time frame of this pros plan, we're looking at 6 years out. Mm-hmm. That there's the likelihood of a expansion in terms of the footprint of the park system on the island, unless it's through donation, I would say is not high. So it's sort of natural that the criteria would be skewed toward trying to maximize the properties that we currently have in the system and the amenities that they provide to the public, because with land costs what they are on Mercer Island, it's a major expansion within the next 6 years anyway, doesn't seem that it's likely to be in the cards, in my opinion. And Commissioner Struck has a question.
Well, question and a comment. I think to respond to Roy, kind of on the opposite side a little bit, I think that looking for new park land should be a priority and so forth as our population grows and our intensity increases over the time. But kind of putting that aside for a second, I think what would be very helpful would be to, take some examples of, say, a new versus an existing, kind of showing, running through, kind of like you were doing on Aubrey Davis, but kind of not really so much site specific, but just kind of going through and saying, here's kind of how things kind of shake out. So I think once we get a better feel for it, I think that'll be appreciated. The question I had was, and maybe this is to Jesse, but in terms of the list of projects, I assume that today there's probably an existing list of X number of projects that would go into the pros plan. The question is how can either the commission and, more importantly, the community either see those, add to those, and so forth?
Well, I have some good news, which is that list will be coming soon. I don't think it will be the July meeting. It's a fall meeting. And then Commissioner Struck, we will be seeking input on the list, and also, through a public process, the survey tool actually that we're going to talk about in just a moment, and feedback from all of you about other projects that should be added to the list. We have an existing capital facilities list. It's a little outdated. So we're working right now with our team to identify the rest of the projects. Steve, our consultant, they've been out, they've started adding to the list based on what they're seeing in the field. So it's taking shape. And then you'll be working on that in the fall and seeking public input. For example, we've heard the community wants a spray pad or a splash park. So that might be a project that you add to your list. It's not on the list right now, but you'll have that opportunity.
Thank you.
Commissioner Westberg, before we stop sharing the screen, I want to pick on the high use intensity site criteria a little bit more. I think Chair Westberg, you said this criteria was, in place to identify the facilities that are getting pounded. And that is a really good description. This is where we've just got extremely high use. And so as I was sitting here thinking about Commissioner Cohen's comments, I think Aubrey Davis Park, as one example, falls into a high use category no matter what. There are parts of Aubrey Davis that are not heavily used, but the majority is a pretty intensely used park. The same would go for Luther Burbank, right? So it would score higher. And then I think about Pioneer Park, and it's a mixed bag for me. I think we'd really have to analyze each potential project. There's a trail section, for example, in Pioneer Park, that's become a freeway and it's really beat up for whatever reason. That project might score as a high intensity use because just that piece of the property itself is getting beat up. And that gets me to my other point. This is still somewhat subjective. So what we want to try to do between this meeting and next is tighten it up enough that our decisions can be defensible. But I have to say, and Steve, I don't know if you have anything you want to add, the high intensity scoring criteria, I think you could toss it without much of an impact because you've got the extending useful life criteria in there. And it also speaks, that criteria is like, hey, we've got something that's getting worn out. So I've been listening intently. I'm curious to know if any of the commissioners have any further thoughts on that.
That makes sense. I mean, extending useful life is looking at impacts from use and trying to maintain or improve the particular amenity in question.
Steve, did you have any thoughts about those two in combination or taking one out? You want to think about it?
Yeah, I'll definitely think about it. I guess the earlier comments about maybe merging or marrying the high intensity with the unique recreation feature to me feels more simpatico. So I think just thinking it through a little bit more will be useful, but the feedback from the commission is greatly helpful.
There are a couple of
Okay.
commissioners with follow-up comments or questions. So Commissioner McCarthy.
Thank you, Jody McCarthy. Yeah, I agree. High use intensity does, sound very similar to the extending useful life, especially if you take out the or add new amenities that provide longer life cycles to it. But I also think it could be merged with the unique recreation feature. I don't know. Personally, I think merging the extending useful life and the high use makes more sense, because they're kind of saying the same thing, but it's just slightly different wording. Thank you.
Commissioner Cohen.
Thank you, Don Cohen. If the intent behind the high use one was, as the city manager described it, the Westburg pounding example, then I would delete that as a freestanding category, because that's not how I read it. I thought it was a preference for increasing intensity no matter what. And that's what caught my eye. So I don't know which one it ought to be combined with and how it should be combined, but I didn't understand apparently what that one really meant.
And I think Commissioner Struck pointed out that our definitions were a little light there, so I apologize for the confusion. It really was Commissioner Cohen to prioritize your sites where you have more activity, frankly, and you've got higher wear and tear. But I also think, I mean, some of your other categories, and I think I'm repeating myself, like safety and security also picks some of that up. If you've got an amenity that's worn down and it's at the end of its useful life and it's no longer safe, it skyrockets in terms of priority. So I'm not sure if there are any other questions, but I think Steve and I probably have what we need to take your feedback and do some retooling here and bring this back for another look.
Rory, Don Cohen, could Steve show the next page again? I couldn't follow how the numbers on the far right in those examples were calculated.
Yeah, let me open that up again. Here, hang on a second.
Yeah, just
Peter, did you have a comment to close?
Yeah, just kind of on the intensity of use issue. I think maybe for existing replacement kinds of things, clearly you don't need that category. I'm more curious or more interested in when you have something that's new. So where are you going to place that? And that's where I think the intensity of use concept comes in, is that we just don't want to overwhelm certain areas with essentially too many activities so that it gets crowded and so forth like that. So I'd be curious to kind of see how that kind of would shake out, that concept.
This is Commissioner Westberg, not to beat a dead horse, but in looking at that criteria, I looked at it from the standpoint is, let's say you have two serious safety issues in parks, a park, one that gets a lot of use and one that gets very little use. And ideally, you'd have the money in your budget to correct them both, because both those would rise to the top because they're safety issues. But if you didn't have the money in your budget, how are you going to prioritize those? How are you going to look at the one that impacts the most users potentially, or the one that is in a lesser used park? So that's kind of the way I was approaching that interpretation. Okay, on to page 2.
And I apologize, I don't recall who asked the question about how.
This Don Cohen, I did. Just pick any one of those. Tell me how do I get to 21 on the first one?
Sure, go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, so I'll roll my mouse over it. So the score for, let's take the first one, lid A, backstop life cycle replacement. So for safety and liability, the rating scale is 0, 1, or 2, 2 being a severe safety issue. So it gets a score of 2, and then it's multiplied by the weighting factor. So each one of these criteria has a rating that then gets multiplied by the weighting factor and then summed at the end of the column. So it would be 2 times 6 is 12, plus 3, plus 4, plus 2. Hopefully that adds up to 21. That's the intent.
This is Commissioner Westberg. Yeah, I looked at that and understood what you did, but I thought if this was a table that was going to be presented to the public, expecting them to do the math and understand that is probably maybe too much. And so if the table could be revised to show in each cell the actual amount, the actual multiplied amount of 2 times 6 or 3 times 1, I think would make the table easier to understand.
Fair point. Thank you. And also, as Jesse mentioned earlier, we're not sure yet how this might get rolled into the proposed plan. It may be an appendix that then informs how the actual capital project list is represented, because that will likely show the projects and sequence them in time based on a priority rating like this. So we're still working through some of those issues, but that's a good comment. Thank you. Any other questions, comments on prioritization?
I don't see any, so I guess we're ready to move to the survey.
Just an opening comment on the survey. You might be thinking, when we started this pros planning process almost, 2 years ago now, you didn't tell us there was going to be a second survey. And that's because at the time we didn't anticipate there would be one. What's happened is the pros plan, because it was delayed by a year due to the pandemic. We're now running up against a work item that you'll be tackling next year, which is advising the city council on the Luther Burbank Parks Maintenance Levy renewal. So it's a levy, a ballot measure. And typically when we begin ballot measure discussions, we often poll our community about maintenance and capital project priorities. So we've spent some time figuring out what to do since these two are merging. And we thought the best tool would be to actually go out with a second survey with the goal of getting really specific on, and most of the survey, well, a big portion of the draft survey is on capital projects and really drilling down on priorities. You've got some land acquisition questions in there because the city council is really looking hard at how we might chip away at expanding our park ownership over time. And then of course we built in some additional recreation programming questions because we've heard a lot about we want more waterfront activities, and to better inform your pros plan and even your recreation reset work, we tried to get a little more specific. So that's what we're up to. It's why we're recommending a second survey. I'm not sure we could capture all of that information just through public meetings, and this would be run as a statistically valid survey. So with that, we wanted to get, I know you're thinking, oh my gosh, Jesse, we have to go through another survey, but we're looking for your feedback. Not sure how you'd prefer to walk through this. Steve, do you happen to have the survey? So when you're ready, we're happy to screen share, and at your pleasure, we can go through it page by page. Yes, page by page, I see. Okay. All right, that first section is just the intro, and question one is, the standard warm-up question for us. How often are you using Mercer Island parks, trails, and open space facilities? This will be also an interesting benchmark. to see if it shifted during the pandemic or not. And oops. This question number 2, and Commissioner Westberg, I'll just ask, or Chair Westberg, I apologize. I'll just ask you to interrupt me if you see questions as we go. Number 2 is
No
also
problem.
number 2 is also a benchmark question. We asked this in your first pros survey. Our maintenance suffered greatly during the pandemic, so it'll be interesting to compare this data to a year and a half ago. And number 3 is a follow-on question of, tell us what was going on during the pandemic for you. Were you out using the parks more? That's our hypothesis. Less, or was it about the same? What value does that have? We're really, the trends right now in park usage is interesting. We're predicting as an industry that, you know, parks use was up during the pandemic and it's going to stay up. And moving on to number 4, this is
Commissioner Struck, excuse me, Commissioner Struck has a question or comment?
Yeah, my comments on question 4, so I'll let Jessie finish her intro.
Okay, yes, I have one too, so all right, go ahead, Jessie.
All right, so number 4 is a thematic question, and this is, I think we took this one out of another survey as a sample. I'm really trying to get some data to help you inform your policies and goals and priorities that you'll incorporate into your pros plan. Steve and I don't know, Steve, if you want to chime in here. You have other questions in the survey that are far more specific, but again, you've got, you know, maintenance, high priority, not a priority, improving, restoring, is it a high priority, not a priority, safety improvements, you've got acquiring new land, so we've got, and building new parks and trails. So these are 5 big themes. Comments, thoughts?
Commissioner Struck, go ahead.
Yes, Peter Struck. So this is just really more survey construction. The columns high, medium, not, and not sure. I would either add another column low priority or make it the 3rd column be low or not a priority. Because and I have the same comment further on, but you know, if I'm thinking, you know, maintaining, well, let's see, building new parks, I'm not really low. I think it's a low priority. Well, then I go, where should I go? So I think we're kind of missing something there.
I'm laughing, Commissioner Struck, because Steve and I had this exact conversation last week. We were wrestling with it. So I think we might lean towards changing that 3rd column to low / not a priority. At one point we had it split out into low or not a priority, but I'm open to other feedback.
Well, if I can follow, my view is I'd prefer to have the an additional column because that just gives you another data point, so you get better differentiation, I guess.
Okay.
This is Commissioner Westberg. My thought on this question, and I agree with Peter's comment with regard to adding a column, but my thought was that these 5 categories didn't really present 5 distinct themes that who's not going to vote for safety improvements? I mean, that's or for whom would that not be a high priority? That's almost a given. And then you have acquiring new land for parks, trails, and open space, but you also have building new parks and trails. Is the latter category on existing park property, building new parks and trails on land that we already have or own? It seemed to me that the distinctions here really boiled down to 3 distinctions. One was maintaining what we have. 2 is improving, upgrading what we have. Or 3, acquiring new lands so that we can add to the system. So that's my 2 cents worth.
Yeah.
Chair Westberg, may I make a comment?
Of course.
So one thing to keep in mind as we go through this, and you may have already recognized this, there are a lot of questions on this draft preliminary set of survey questions. So also keep in mind whether a particular question is a weak question relative to some of the others that we'll cover shortly. So we have a lot of questions and we'll likely have to call a few. So if this one isn't a strong question that gets you the information you want, maybe others in the survey draft are better and we drop this one, just an offer.
Thanks. Okay, there are no questions, so please continue.
All right. Question number 5. This one is a lot of stuff. What we're trying to get to here, and this to Steve's point, question 4 may just naturally drop off because you put question 5 out here, and we're really starting to get into specific amenities. And the way we've structured the question is around spending. And you might say, well, people don't know what we're spending. And that's part of the point, although we could also restructure and come at it slightly differently. But we want to know, how's our city investment? Do you want to see us doing more for open space or less, or is it about the right amount? And so we've taken from the first survey and the public engagement process so far, all the things that have come up, and they're still in general categories. So like sports courts is still everything combined, right? Tennis, pickleball, actually that should say basketball, not baseball. And what we're looking for here is that dial, like what does the community really want us to up our investment on? Where are we just quite right? And maybe where are we overdoing it? The feedback from the staff when they reviewed this was, I think using the term spending might confuse people. We saw, this came out of I think it was the City of Seattle survey. So curious to know your thoughts on this.
This is Commissioner Westberg. I'll kick off. Well, you anticipated my comment because I think using the word spending would be somewhat confusing. Spending, as you implied, is standing in for something. It's level of investment, it's representation in the overall system or something like that. But most people I don't have a clue what the city spends on any of these categories. So I'm not sure what spending is supposed to, if spending is supposed to represent a level of investment, should the community, the city of Mercer Island invest more in these areas? That's a different question, but it gets at the same information I think you're looking for.
Yeah, I think the term could easily be swapped out with invest more, invest less. And it's a perception question, right? We don't actually expect people to know how much we're spending. It's if people are really dissatisfied, for example, with our tennis courts, we would expect them to say invest more. So those terms could easily be swapped out. I'm curious what others' reaction are to this potential question.
Commissioner McCarthy.
Thank you. This is Jody McCarthy. I know I was trying to think of what would be a better word to replace spend with, and I was thinking maybe focus or prioritize would be better words instead of using monetary terms.
Great suggestions.
Thank you.
Chair Westberg, are there any other comments or questions on number 5?
Commissioner Struck has one.
Yeah, what the vice chair said regarding using the word I came up with was prioritize as well. Thank you.
I see no more questions, so we can roll on.
All right. As we go through the survey, if you're starting to feel like there's some redundancy that's not helpful, as Steve pointed out, please give us a shout, because we kept all the questions in, so we had ample, options for all of you. Now, question 6 is getting even a step more specific. And this question is different than your first survey. So we are actually looking at specific amenities, and we've attempted to capture everything that we've heard so far. And we're asking, how important is this to you, or it's not important? You'll note as you look down the list, now we've actually broken things out. So pickleball courts, tennis courts, basketball courts, those are their own line. And we did this because, well, pickleball is a good example. You've been receiving a lot of feedback about pickleball, and you all will probably be making some policy recommendations around sport courts in your pros plan, for example. So we wanted to make sure you had a solid data point, about that. You've heard from the folks interested in expanding or new opportunities for BMX or mountain biking facilities. So that is showing up as its own line. That would be a potential new amenity. Spray park and splash pads is also something we've heard through the process. Outdoor fitness equipment, that's kind of a funny one. We've heard some people say that is just a waste of space, and other people said, yes, we love it. So we thought, well, this is something that we should put out and test. So again, this is now a very much more specific list. I would say, what's your reaction to how the question's structured? Is there anything missing?
I apologize.
Commissioner
It doesn't
Struck.
all fit on the screen at once. I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, Commissioner Struck.
Yeah, two thoughts. Thank you. First, on just the construction, I would add again a column after somewhat important, saying either less important or make it little or not important, something like that, just to kind of create that same, as we talked about on, I think, question 4. And then in terms of the list, I know that some had talked about like a native garden or something to that effect. I don't know if that's kind of picked up somewhere or not in terms of a use.
Actually, that is a great catch. I don't think that's in here, and it probably should be. Thank you.
Or pea patches either, unless Peter intended to include that.
Great. Any other feedback on question 6? All right. And commissioners, I'll just remind you, this survey will take your feedback from this evening, and we'll come back to you and check signals again in July. So if you wake up at 3 in the morning and you have a light bulb go off and you want to suggest something, please don't hesitate to reach out to myself or Ryan Daly. 6A is plugged in to just say, all right, we gave you a long list of potential park amenities. Tell us what your top 3 are. And it'll probably be in a drop-down list of some format in the electronic survey. You all are going to have a fantastically challenging situation ahead in terms of prioritizing all of these, hopes and dreams. So we wanted to give you a tool to really try to grab, the top priority.
This is Commissioner Westberg. I had a wording change to 6A, which you can take or leave, but and that was the revised wording, which I can send to you, as well as select 3 amenities from the list in question 6 that are most important to you and your family.
I think I've got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. We started to wander into this topic a little bit during our previous discussion. The City Council in our kickoff meeting and even in subsequent discussions is really starting to noodle on, what about land acquisition? It's not getting any cheaper. We recognize it's very expensive. So we thought we really should we should test this in a survey. So 7 is a statement. Do you think we have enough land? And it's a range from strongly agree to strongly disagree.
Commissioner Struck.
Yes, so on question 7, my suggestion would be to split out now and in the future and basically have 2 columns, because the way I would answer this is probably now I'd probably agree or strongly agree that we're probably in good shape. But in the future, and I've done the math, if you assume, I think the Puget Sound Regional Council says we're gonna, over the next 40 years, add 5,000 more people or something like that. If you kind of take the current amount of parkland acres to population, and then you add 5,000, say going from 25,000 to 30, you basically have to add another Luther Burbank Park. Well, that's probably not going to happen. So I think at the point, but the point is that the future, you might be much more strong or agree that we need, more land. So I would split the 2 out.
That's a great suggestion. Thank you. Chair Westberg, are there any other questions or comments on number 7?
I do not see any.
All right. So number 8, we're taking it a step further and saying, okay, if we're going to acquire property, what would you like us to acquire property for? What are your highest priorities? And this list was a little tricky to generate. So we've got waterfront, habitat preservation, open space areas, and we put in there that those spaces may include walking and jogging trails. There's a natural nexus there. Land for active recreation, such as sports fields and playgrounds. That one feels to me like a really high lift, but you never know. Pocket parks are small neighborhood parks. This is really starting to think through where we have gaps geographically that it might make sense to put a small amenity in at some point. Or, we need more land for future indoor facilities, whatever they might be.
Fix the scale so it's 1 to 5, not 1 to 6.
Commissioner Struck.
Oh, you're right. Sorry.
Yeah, I just want to add, I think this is a great question, because this really, it's not, you got to prioritize. And I think this will be really, really fascinating to see kind of where the community lands on this one. Thank you.
I don't see any other questions.
Great. Number 9. We'd like, just for, we always like to include an open-ended question or 2 in the survey. And this is a hopes and dreams question. If you want us to do just one thing, tell us more about it.
And it's also the same question we ended the virtual open house on.
Shall we move on to number?
I think we're good to move on.
All right. So switching gears a little bit from projects and land acquisition, we wanted to go back and retest the recreation programs and activities questions with a little more specificity. And I'm anticipating Commissioner Struck may suggest adding a 4th column here as well to the scale, but these are all your potential types of recreation classes. And again, just trying to gauge interest, and it's another sort of point in time survey as we continue to work on the recreation restart.
I don't see any questions on this one, so I think we're okay.
All right, well,
We're assuming, are you assuming that you're going to change the column headings to match the other questions per?
I will. So I
Commissioner?
think that's been a great comment from Commissioner Struck, and for consistency, we'll go through and make that change throughout the document.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so number 11, it's a twist on number 10. But you've all been having these conversations, and certainly this will be part of our discussions forevermore. This is really asking, are these services the city should be providing directly? So should we be in this business directly? Should we be partnering to provide this service, outsourcing it or contracting for the service, or we should not be in the business at all? I was on the fence about this question initially. I'm curious, maybe I shouldn't have previewed my own bias, but it is, that I will just say, and with my city manager hat on, that your city government's evolving. And at one point in time, we were trying to be in the business of doing everything. And that was a particular challenge in the recreation division. So as we're learning to work differently, work smarter, more efficiently, we are exploring opportunities, to deliver services in other ways, like through partnerships and contracting. But equally important to us is, what business should we not be in?
We do have a couple questions, starting with Commissioner McCarthy.
Thank you, Jody McCarthy. I find the wording of this very confusing. And I think that people will not spend a lot of time trying to understand what exactly you guys are, what we're trying to get out of this question with the way that it's worded. So I think that the wording definitely needs to be streamlined a little bit more. And I think that we might even want to take out, should we be a core or a partner, and just say, like, should we be providing these services or not? Because people are not going to nuance between the city directly providing something or partnering and contracting out those services. They're not going to be like, oh yeah, the summer programs are at the community center, but it's not Parks and Rec. It's actually contracted out. They're not worried about that part of it. Thank you.
Commissioner McCarthy, that's exactly where I was on this one. I've been going back and forth. Do we actually care? Because some of this really is a business decision and less of a policy decision. But I'm curious what other people think.
Commissioner Struck has a question.
Well, just a comment. First, I like the thrust of the question, but I think the vice chair's comments, I would definitely want to beta test this one to see if people really did understand it and so forth. But I think her last comment about, does the average individual really care, whether, it's a city employee that's providing the service, or it's a partnership organization, or it's outsourced to something. I think in the greater scheme of things, I don't think they really care. If they're getting good service, I don't think they care. So I think that's it's probably more basic as, should we provide it or not?
This, I just want to point out, I think you all saw it. This is where seasonal lifeguarding at swim beaches shows up. A service that was eliminated a couple years ago. It's certainly been a theme in our public engagement. So if we modify this question, I do think lifeguarding has got to show up somewhere in this survey. But maybe the question just needs to be modified of, should we provide this service or not?
This is Commissioner Westberg. Yeah, it perhaps could be, lifeguarding could be combined with swimming and water safety in the question number 10. To me, there's a lot of overlap between, it's a different question, but there's a lot of overlap in the categories between question 10 and question 11. So with question 10, you're saying, is this important to you? And then with question 11, a smaller, admittedly addressing a smaller subset of activities, you're saying, who do you think should pay for it?
Yeah.
And maybe there's a way of somehow teasing that out in one question. I'm not, this may be something that occurs to me that I'll have to send a comment on.
Chair Westberg, I will observe I concur, there's overlap between 10 and 11. So we left them in so that we could have this discussion. Let us, I don't know if there's any other comments or questions, but we can go back and take a look at the two questions and maybe figure out how to marry them up a little bit better.
Okay, Commissioner McCarthy has her hand up. So go ahead, Jody.
Yeah, thank you, Jody McCarthy. I just wanted to say that, yes, we definitely want to have something about the lifeguarding in the survey somewhere, because there's a lot of passion about that. And it's a safety thing as well. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else on 11? Maybe we move on?
And move on.
All right. Number 12, and again, some overlap here with some of the prior questions, but we heard loud and clear, yes, we want more water-based programs. So these are, structured opportunities for people to register and participate. This is the list we came up with based on all the feedback we had in our own brainstorming of potential water programs. I'm guessing we'll go ahead and add that fourth column here as well. Thoughts on this list? What are we missing? Is this useful? Our team would.
Commissioner Struck has a comment.
No, the question. So I don't know if Commissioner Cohn is still here, but so fishing programs, is this how to teach people how to fish?
Yeah.
Okay.
There were programs before the pandemic hit. Again, I'm not saying they're likely to get that many votes on this one, but I think you want to know it.
Our take as staff from the feedback we've received so far is, okay, there's definitely enthusiasm for water recreation programs, but that's about as much as we know right now. So we're in a tell us more mode. Is it learning to fish programs, or, mom and me fishing, whatever it might be, or are people looking for something else? We just don't have that information yet based on our feedback so far.
This is Commissioner Westberg. So the reason that guarded swim beaches, for example, is not on this list is because it's not a program per se?
That's correct.
Okay.
And that's kind of the distinction between questions 10 and 11 too. Questions 10 is about programs and classes, whereas question 11 that we just went through is more about services. So this comes back to programs. We might also group them accordingly too when we refine this.
Hey, Rory?
Yes.
Oh, Don Conan, further response to Peter Struck's question. I was thinking recently that the fishing programs wouldn't necessarily be just learning how to fish, but if it's possible to do this, there'd be some areas set up periodically where you have rings, sort of like hula hoop type rings that are anchored on the bottom, and kids with casting plugs, practice plugs, to help them learn how to cast accurately, not just sit there drop lining with worms. So that was just, there are different nuances that might be more interesting than just teaching kids how to tie a fisherman knot.
I'm sure there are.
And I think Commissioner Cohen just volunteered to teach that class. No.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, let's keep going.
Okay. Again, if you have any other ideas for aquatics programs, please give us a shout. This is a question 13 it's a barriers question. You know, if you weren't participating in recreation, and we ran a version of this previously, we're going to ask it again. Tell us why. You know, it gets to operating solutions and really starts to drill down on your recreation reset strategy of things, you know, to be aware of.
Commissioner Cohen.
Don Cohen, it doesn't have parking on this one.
Not sure how we missed that. Thank you.
Because it had, maybe that's under other. Because it's on some other ones, as I recall.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Headed to the finish line here. All right, this question gets fun. I am certain your pros plan is going to start to peel the onion a little bit more regarding opportunities for additional revenue. I always, you know, hold my breath a little bit when we issue a survey with these questions because people have strong reactions, but we wanted to toss these out. They've come up. We know Little League and like the high school booster program, for example, is really interested in number 2. They want to put advertising in the parks. We've really been a no commercialization type of park system. We've certainly kicked around the idea of paid parking at Luther Burbank. So this was our list of potential items, really focusing on fee-based approach. And the next question gets into potentially new taxes. But what was your reaction to question 14? Thoughts?
Commissioner McCarthy.
Thank you. This is Jody McCarthy. I think that there are a lot of potentials here for having like paid parking, for example, at Luther Burbank. I don't think that seems unreasonable, especially with the amount of people using that park. Also, I would say like for the reservation system for tennis, could that be like just at specific or most used ones and not at every single one? Because some of the smaller parks, I don't think that you're necessarily going to need it. But yes, I do think that we should be charging for parking at some of these parks. You know, even if it is just something that we do seasonally for the summertime when they have the most people there. And especially something else to consider is people parking there and using mass transit once that the trains start going as well, because for a super fit person, it is not a big deal for them to walk from the not the main Luther Burbank, but the other Luther Burbank parking lot closer to the swim beach up to take the train.
Vice Chair McCarthy or other commissioners, is there anything not on this list that we didn't think of? To
Commissioner
test?
Cook has a question.
Sorry, I have another follow-up thing.
Go ahead, Jody.
For the outfield fence banners, I don't understand why this hasn't been something that Mercer Island hasn't been doing forever. And I know that the high school boys baseball team has been asking for this for years. They would like to put that at Island Crest Park. So again, why not take advantage of that and also support our Mercer Island teams?
So think about this, right? We're going to toss this we'll ask the community, what do you think? If there's large support for any of these items, then that gets us into the next level of discussion, which is really around, so there is broad support for advertising in parks. What does that policy look like? So, you know, we're at the stage of, do you like this or not? And the next step would be, it goes into your pros plan and you all continue to work with the staff on developing those policies.
Commissioner Struck has a question or comment, and then Commissioner Cohen.
Yeah, I think, yeah, just as a comment, I think I would just stay with these 5. Because I think this is the kind of the first time you're kind of, introducing this. And so I'm not sure having more things, you're going to get a much, how do I say, overall view. But clearly, if you go to Marymore Park, it's been paid parking there for 4 or 5 years now, at least. I know we go to Port of Everett quite a bit. They've just introduced paid parking. So it's happening all around. And so let's just kind of get a sense of where the community's at.
Commissioner Cohen.
Don Cohen, I had 3 comments. One, I have always opposed having outfield fence banners of a commercial nature because it changes the character of it. You ride along in a car, you walk along Island Crest Way, or when I used to take the bus, and being able to just sort of glance over through the trees and see a game going on seems to me to detract from it. But that's my view. Second thing is, if you're looking for something that wouldn't go on here now, but another opportunity to raise money, if there is ever any emphasis on potentially changing the name of Luther Burbank Park for the reasons indicated in a recent communication, you might consider selling naming rights for a period of time.
Very creative idea.
And Ryan has his hand up, but before I call on him, I'm going to make a comment, which is that I would recommend somehow rewording this question. I think these categories are fine. I couldn't think of anything to add to them, but I think it's important that this question be characterized as, I don't know, these are possibilities. These are something that has come up, not communicate the idea that this is sort of a done deal that we want your opinion on or something like that. Make it a little more suggestive or hypothetical. And Ryan.
Thank you, Chair. One item that had popped into my head as of recently today was the thought of food trucks in the parks or vending services, those kinds of things. I'm curious if that's a question the commission would want to ask. Also, when we're thinking about our ball fields and whatnot, we have concession stands that we currently and previous practice has not been renting those out. It's just been a sort of a free usage to those user groups. So just putting that thought out there for the commission to react to.
This is Commissioner Westberg. I'm not seeing any hands up, but I would say it's worth exploring, particularly the existing concession stands at the that we have, and exploring the idea of a contract or some kind of a rental use.
Ryan and I hadn't talked about this before, he just mentioned it, but I actually think it's a good grab, Ryan, because from time to time, concession sales do come up. So I might add it if there's agreement.
Okay, I don't see any other hands up, so
all right.
Ready.
Go ahead. So we have 2 alternative questions here, and I wanted to make sure the commission knows we can't add, we know we have a levy discussion coming up and a future ballot measure to renew the parks levy. We can't ask a question that says, will you support the levy renewal? You can't do that. But you can ask questions about, like 15 it's one approach of, you know, how do you feel like we should pay for all this stuff? You know, should it all be user fees, taxes? I don't know. Steve and I weren't particularly in love with question number 15. I'd love to hear your reaction. And number 16 is another variation on a potential taxation question, which is, you know, while we're not proposing anything right now, nobody panic. You know, what additional funding sources would you support? You know, the first option being none, you should have enough to do what you need. Or anyway, so these are just some ideas we wanted to toss out. I think the survey is okay without either of these questions, but we're probably not going to run another statistically valid question between now and your levy discussion, which will be happening sometime next year. So I just wanted to throw out there, is there anything else in that theme that you think we should try to ask here?
Commissioner McCarthy.
Thank you. This is Jody McCarthy. I think both of these questions could be taken the wrong way and incite panic. One. Two, like, I don't know if people would really understand 15, because they are like, but I pay user fees, so aren't I paying for it all? My, you know, like, so yeah, if we were going to keep number 15 in, I think that it needs to be reworded in a different way, or share more information about what we currently do to help people understand, because they're like, but I pay right now. So they don't understand, you know, or like they could be confused by what does that mean by 100% of the user fees or 100% from taxes. That's my opinion. Thanks.
Commissioner Cohen.
Don Cohen. The city manager and the city attorney will know more about number 16 than I would, but I have had a little bit of experience in front of the Public Disclosure Commission, and I think somebody down there might take the view that with the subject of a potential levy for open space and parks, et cetera, on the horizon, that they might take issue with this number 16, even though there's an attempt to make it more vanilla.
Commissioner Struck.
Thank you, Peter Struck. With respect to number 15, I don't think I would ask that question, for the reason that, you know, we went through the cost recovery pyramid exercise, which basically is this question, right?
Yeah.
And we're going to kind of use that cost recovery pyramid to, you know, to help set our prices and so forth and so on. So I will get feedback from the community through our actual pricing as to whether they like it. If they don't like it, they won't use the facility. And I think that if you go the other way and say, you know, and they don't understand, well, you know, we don't have enough, you know, tax revenue essentially to provide all these services, then you got to raise taxes. I think it's just too complicated. I don't think the responses are going to be very informative for policy purposes.
Yeah,
Thank you.
We had him in and I moved him to the optional list. I guess coming into this meeting, just my staff thought is, I'm not sure these questions are going to provide good value. And Vice Chair McCarthy pointed out they could really potentially freak people out. So I'm hearing not a lot of enthusiasm for either one, and we're fine with that.
Yeah, this is Commissioner Westberg. I'll add my 2 cents, and it follows on what you just said. I thought 15 maybe could be reworked, but like Peter said, it's basically the recreation reset strategy, and park use and recreation and participation in recreation programs will prove the wisdom of that approach. And 16, I thought that just raised the hair in the back of my head, and I just I thought I don't think we want to put this in this survey at this time.
That's fair. So the remaining questions are demographics. So Steve, if you don't mind stopping screen sharing, I have one more just overarching question. And again, we're going to come back and put a revised draft in front of you in July. So thinking ahead to all the decisions and policy recommendations you have to make as a commission, both regarding the PROS plan, capital project prioritization, and even looking out a year to helping inform the levy, is there anything else you want that's on your mind that this needs to go in this survey? And again, I don't think we'll run another statistically valid survey. So this is our pass at it. Anything we're missing would really help you as an advisory body? All right, well, I will extend the invitation to, don't call me at 3 a.m. But if you have that moment where you have an idea, please reach out to us at 3 a.m. via email.
All right. Do you have what you need?
We do, and you will see us again in July. We'll have updated drafts of both documents we went over with you tonight, and we will be wading into the topic of goals. So thank you for a great discussion tonight. We appreciate your time.
You're quite welcome. Okay, commissioners, thank you for hanging in there. The fourth item of business is the election of officers for the Parks and Recreation Commission. As you are aware, the elected officers of the commission are a chair and a vice chair. The term of office for chair and vice chair is 1 year with the possibility of re-election. And each officer may serve a maximum of 2 consecutive terms. We do have a quorum. We're down to four commissioners, but we can proceed to do this. And so I'm asking for your patience and to bear with me while we move through this. So just again, as outlined in the bylaws, the following process is to be followed to elect new officers. We take nominations first for the position of chair from the floor. They don't require a second. The chair then, once all the nominations are in, the chair declares nominations closed. Voting takes place in the order the nominations are made. If there's only one nomination, commissioners can vote on that by voice vote. And I'm not sure whether that applies in Zoom or whether we need to record that vote for visibility purposes. I think I would err on the, do you have a comment on that, Ryan?
I think staff preference would be a roll call vote just to make sure we're on the safe side on that one.
Okay. So we'll do a roll call vote. The tricky one part may be that a candidate must receive a majority vote of the full commission with a minimum of 4 votes. That's all of us. So if we don't get to that point, then we'll have to do this at the next meeting. And then we repeat the same process for the vice chair. And again, official duties include facilitating commission meetings and of the chair include facilitating commission meetings in a fair, efficient, productive, and informative manner, acting as the primary commission representative to the city council, serving as the primary line of communication to city staff, working with city staff to schedule meetings and develop meeting agendas, appointing subcommittee chairs, and the vice chair attends meetings with staff and the chair and fulfills the duty of the chair in this chair's absence. So, any questions before we start this process? Seeing none, the floor is open for nominations for chair of the Parks and Recreation Commission. Commissioner Cohen.
Well, I sorry, I had a question. So are you at the end of your term, Rory, that can you repeat yourself or not?
We cannot, neither Jody nor I can repeat ourselves in our current position.
Okay, then I have, if we're going to do this tonight rather than wait until next time, then I will move that Jody
The
be.
nomination is in order.
Yeah, I'll nominate Jody as chair and Peter Struck as vice chair.
Okay, we'll deal with the chair first. Are there other nominations for chair? Okay, seeing none, Jody has been nominated for chair. City staff, would you please call the roll?
For the nomination of Commissioner McCarthy as chair, I'll call the roll. Chair Westberg.
Aye.
Vice Chair McCarthy. Thank you. Commissioner Cohen.
Aye.
And Commissioner Struck.
Aye.
Thank you. Let the record show that Commissioner McCarthy was appointed chair.
Was unanimously elected.
And unanimously elected.
All right. So we'll go through the same process for vice chair. Commissioner Cohen has already nominated Commissioner Struck. And are there, Commissioner Struck, I assume you will accept that nomination? Okay, he's nodding. Okay, so are there other nominations for the position of vice chair? Seeing none, nominations are closed and we will proceed to a vote.
Thank you.
Would you please call the roll?
Chair Westberg.
Aye.
Newly elected Chair McCarthy.
Aye.
Commissioner Cohen.
Aye.
Commissioner Struck.
Aye.
Let the record show that Commissioner Struck was appointed vice chair unanimously.
Great, thank you very much for a very efficient election and for the commissioners who are willing to serve in these leadership roles over the coming year. So I know we're running late. The fifth item of business is a Parks and Recreation Commission planning and meeting schedule update from Ryan Daly.
Thank you, Chair Westberg, or former Chair Westberg at this point. I don't have any updates to the planning schedule at this time, so it's as is, and I'll continue to update, and we'll be working with the new chair and vice chair on our planning schedule as we move forward.
Okay, the sixth item of business is a department report and update. That's also Ryan.
All right. Let me share my screen very briefly. This will be quick. Okay, so coming off, you heard earlier on summer camps, you were undersold earlier. We're over 900 registrations now to date. So just an outstanding turnout. Staff originally had projected 750 registrations. So that's just working out really well. I think it's demonstrating, maybe two different things. This is a process that really works in utilizing these third-party vendors. And then secondly, parents want to get their kids the heck out of the house. And so that's what we're seeing. It's outstanding. It's a great spot to be. It was a really early push for us. It was really the first thing we were doing on the recreation side. So excellent job by all of those who have helped us get the word out there. And we do still have some areas, some camp programs available for people to register for, and all of the information is there. Did that work? There we go. Unfortunately, on Tuesday evening, we had a fire. MIFD responded to flames at the Aubrey Davis Park at the picnic shelter there. A trash can, you can kind of see it in this picture here on the lower right. There was a trash can that's completely burnt out. That caught the roof on fire. It's looking like that's a total loss at this point. Staff's working through insurance and whatnot to figure out if that's what our opportunity is there to recoup on damages. And also on the other side, this is a revenue generating facility for us. And so that's a loss of about $5,000. We were anticipating this summer as we were moving forward with some new booking opportunities. I'm getting a network connection error flashing on my screen. So if I get cut off, you can all just wave goodbye to me. We do have a new payment system at the boat launch called Pay by Phone. This sort of aligns with some of the commission's conversations about various parking opportunities or implementation opportunities at other locations. So this is an item that has been put forward. It just became active in the last week. So far, so good. We're continuing to use that. It is extremely user-friendly. Not having to use the machine we had there in the past that was constantly providing issues. This gives a couple more options on how you can pay for your pass. We have a monthly, an annual, and a daily option at this time. So it's very efficient for us to pull reports and understand what the usage is, and also, as I mentioned, very, very customer friendly. As I mentioned at the last meeting, life jacket loaner stations, and from what I can see today and earlier this week, good thing we got them in when we did. It's an opportunity for individuals who may not have life jackets to be able to grab those free of charge and utilize them, enhance the safety that we have down at the boat launch. That's where this location is, or that's where this life jacket loaner station is located. We are anticipating in 2022 to add those to Groveland, Clark Beach, as well as Luther Burbank Park. So more to come on that. And again, thank you to Heather Kurt, Island resident, and the Community Fund for helping fund this project. And then stealing this slide from the city manager, the city now is on Instagram. We're getting hip and doing what the kids are doing these days. So you'll be able to see a lot of content on there. If you have Instagram, show me how to set it up. I honestly don't know. But it's a great opportunity for us to share pictures and really share what's happening on Mercer Island, but really from a parks and recreation standpoint, this is a great step forward. I mean, it's a great opportunity for us to continue to enhance our relationship with the residents. So looking forward to getting information out there on Instagram. And with that, I will pass it back to you, Rory, or Chair Westberg.
Okay, thank you, Ryan. The seventh item of business is commissioner reports and work plan updates. Commissioners, do you have anything to report or comment on? Commissioner Cohen?
I sent this to Ryan and to Paul West. I don't know if you can see this. This is, can you see this? This is 2 weeks ago at Clark Beach, my grandson. That's about a 10 or 11 inch yellow perch.
Sweet. Commissioner Struck.
Yes, Peter Struck. I just want to show my appreciation first to the parks and maintenance staff. Obviously, a lot of people out in the parks with the warmer weather and so forth, and I've heard a lot of good comments about the upkeep of the parks and so forth. So I think everybody's doing a good job. I know there's a lot more work to do, but kudos there. Also, I want to thank I guess former chair Rory Westberg for his leadership over the last at least the last several months that I've been involved. He's been great, and I look forward to working with the new chair Jody in the coming year. So thank you very much.
Well, I want to thank all of you for putting up with me for as long as you have. And we're leaving, I feel that the commission will be in very good hands with Jody and Peter in the leadership roles. And I just wanted to do, it's not really a park issue, but a quick shout out to Jason and his staff. I put in a service ticket less than 36 hours ago about some overgrown vegetation that was creating a visual impairment on where 90th Avenue Southeast meets Island Crest Way. And that vegetation is gone already. It was gone this morning. So that is terrific service. And I just wanted to acknowledge that. So thank you.
If I may, Commissioner Chair Westberg, thank you for that. And to Commissioner Struck's comment, I just wanted you all to know that we have a body of work in which has been deferred that we are working on scoping to catch up. And we're hoping that that package hits the street. We have to publicly advertise it because it's contracted services, but we're hoping that hits the street in July, and end of July, August, we can get a bunch more work done. So our crews are finally getting through and getting the parks spruced up, but there's more work to be done. So appreciate the positive comments, but just wanted you all to be aware that more work is forthcoming. So stay tuned. Thank you all for an extra long meeting tonight. Good work.
Thank you. Well, it's 5:30 a.m. in Paris, but 8:30 here. And this meeting is adjourned. Just a reminder that our next Parks and Recreation Commission meeting is July 1st at 5:30. Please remain seated until the city staff has terminated the Zoom broadcast. And thank you all for hanging in there. Good evening and stay safe and healthy.
Thanks all. I'm going to stop the recording and end the meeting. Good night.
Good night.